Oh, yeah, I was supposed to be there. So who's that?
So. We have a quorum, calling the meeting to order. Meeting minutes from November 1st. Does anybody have any comments?
They look good to me. Yeah, they look good to me.
I move to approve.
I second.
All in favor? We didn't accept, you abstain. Make sure she knows. Pressing, so. Just remote. All right, library.
All right, so we've kind of done the same thing that we've been doing, just highlighting different parts of the budget. This is the last week. We'll be doing that on our next meeting. We'll be talking about compensation. And then we'll move on to overall reviews and get to a better refined budget as well. So with that, I worked with the library trustees, as you guys know. In New Hampshire, the library trustees actually set their own budget, but they're gracious and they work with us, and they've been really good to work with, just like another department. So I've met with Kate, and then I've also met with the trustees going through their budget and talking through those. We did make a few changes from the budget that you guys originally got. The trustees voted on that last meeting, and then we went ahead and put this spreadsheet together. I'll talk a little bit about probably the biggest change, and then I'll give you guys a little chance to talk with Kate and the trustees if you want to about that. But the biggest change we made was to the part-time library personnel. What we did, we raised we're looking at raising their wages to part-time clerks to $15 an hour, with one of our long-term clerks being at $16 an hour. We've been doing that pretty much across the town. Some of the camp counselors, lifeguards, all of them, we've been raising to $15 an hour to give them a decent wage and to help with recruitment. So we thought it was only fair to bring the clerks up as well, so they're not the lowest paid people in the town. So one thing we did work on, working with Kate, is they had a substitute line that had a couple $1,000s in it. We did away with that substitute line. That's something that they do not have in the library and do not plan to have within the next year. And we use that money to offset a majority of that increase. And then in that salary line is also budgeted for the 5% increase that we might give to other town employees. So that's the biggest change, I guess, before we go through the rest of those, which are pretty simple. Actually, just to summarize, the rest of those lines are really small reductions, just to be a little closer to what was actually spent. A few of those lines are down to zero. The trustees were not comfortable taking those lines all the way to zero, so we've just brought them down a little bit to maintain a little bit of money in there in case it's needed. And that's pretty much their budget.
What is the charge code for the substitute? It's not on this budget at all.
45.50
Yeah.
No?
for the library.
Yeah.
Oh, the substitute.
Yeah.
Like not even in past years, it
It's
doesn't.
not on the past year even.
No.
It's not.
Probably normally in the part-time line, but in our breakdown of salaries, we have a substitute line.
Oh,
a
okay,
part-time
got
clerks
it,
line.
right. Because I was also gonna say the part-time only went up $700 compared to
So
original.
what does the
number.
library personnel budget line become under town manager budget?
It's the 28,710 that was in your packet.
The part-time,
Yes,
what's the full-time personnel line become?
it stays the same
Oh, it stays the same, oh, okay.
of what was presented to you.
Oh, all right, so you had already, put in those things that you just described.
Yeah, and the substitute line, I mean, Dimitri was just asking, the substitute line was in the part-time line. We have a further breakdown
Oh, I
in
see,
our area.
Okay,
So we
good.
use that money to offset the cost of that
great.
salary increase. So what you'll see is a small increase from last year.
I have one question about the books and digital media line. And I'm not at all opposed to the library spending everything they can on books and media. But I did notice that they'd have to spend about $7,000 between now and the end of the year in order to use up the budget. Is that a plan?
Well, those are a little bit older numbers. These aren't actuals as of right now, only a
Okay.
couple months ago, but Kate could probably speak a little bit better to where they're at on the budget right
Okay.
now.
Yeah, so we have it down to about, I think we're right around 3,000 left in that line.
Okay,
Digital eats a lot. We can spend close to $700 a month for just one of our services.
I'm sure.
And I've been trying to hold it a little lower, but,
So is the majority of that in contracted services and subscriptions?
no, so that comes out of a different line. That comes out of repairs and services. This is basic usage, so we have two different services, Hoopla and Overdrive. Overdrive is a curated collection, and the state buys licenses in packets of 100. And as they burn through those licenses, then they choose to repurchase or not. Hoopla is a business. Anytime you see something, you click on it, you have it immediately.
Yeah.
So that spends the money very quickly because the user sometimes can get excited when they see something and they might not preview it and realize that they really didn't want that option. And it still spends the money, you know,
Okay.
so two different businesses.
Now, sort of a logistical question, not for this budget that we're looking at, but for 1 year from this budget.
Mhm.
As you'll be moving into smaller cramped quarters
Yeah,
for potentially a year, is it likely that you'll be still using your full budget, or do you think you would hold back so that you're moving less stuff?
oh. No, I don't see that we'll hold back,
Okay,
no. Because we don't want to interfere with the user experience.
sure.
And potentially more people might shift over to digital, and that's what eats out, you know, chunks out of my budget, like $13,000 I could spend in digital.
Yep.
Because I don't get digital on a discount. Books I get on a discount. I get a 45% discount
Discount
for
on
books. But if people, just because of the way people use their library, they might shift over to digital. And it's a little complicated because of the way the school district impacts the budget, because we serve 5 towns.
Mm.
So it gets complicated.
I'm sure.
That book budget is, yeah, it's something that I watch very closely. And we have conversations in the trustee meetings about how to manage it, so.
Thank you.
So Kate, for Hoopla, which I've contemplated doing, and I would be one of the ones muddling through, running through your budget. Is there a way we can do an education piece of that so that people know that's what they're doing?
Yeah, so every month we have a text talk.
Mhm.
People can come and see how to use our digital services. And again, it's something that's a constant conversation that we have with people.
Mhm.
And how we present it to them is think bananas. If you bite a green banana, you're still gonna have to have that banana. You're not gonna take it back to the store.
Right.
Same thing with digital. If you check out a book, you don't want it, you've still paid for it. It's just the way it goes. You know, so we talk a lot about that, you know, that's why they give you the sample option to preview the item. You don't pay for that. You haven't checked it out yet, but you can look at the preview, you know, you can, you know, see if that item is what you want. It's a huge part of the user experience, and it's a huge education piece that my staff and I do all the time. But it's just exciting for people. And another thing that they'll do is they'll see that so we've backed them down. We used to allow 20 checkouts a month on Hoopla. Now we've backed them down to 5 because I am trying to keep this, you know, somewhat manageable because it gets expensive, you know. So we just really talk to them and say, you know, think about what you can get from this service, what you can get from this service, what can you use? We have some people that will get to the end of the month, realize they haven't checked out their 5 checkouts, check them all out in 2 days. You're not gonna be able to take that much information in, you know, because we think of every item we think of as information. We don't think books, audio. So it's an education piece that we're working on constantly. And I work with the companies constantly because I can change the user experience to manage this budget, but I don't really want to. I can take tiers off
Mhm.
and make them basically blind to the user, but I don't want to do that yet, so.
But for me, for instance, I
Oh,
pick
yes,
up the
Hoopla.
card that said Hoopla and I'm like, I should check that out. But I have no information about what I'm learning tonight. So we've got a hole there, because I'm sure I'm not alone,
Mhm.
because there's only so many places you go to meetings to update yourself and so on.
Yeah,
So you grab the card, you go do it, and you can run through a lot of money, not realizing what you're doing. in the
Well,
library.
but I've backed everybody down to only 5 checkouts a month. So the most expensive item in Hoopla is $3.99. That's the ebooks, and actually that's what we check out. That's what eats the most money.
Okay.
So,
I have a really dumb question.
no, there's no dumb question.
What's Hoopla?
Hoopla is one of our digital services that we offer through the library.
And how do I get to Hoopla?
So you would have to download the app onto your device.
Is it kind of like Kindle?
It just depends on the device that you're gonna use it on. So you just download it and then you access, and it's got over 1 million options in it.
Of fiction, non-fiction?
Ebooks, audiobooks, graphic novels, music, television shows.
But
I like books.
you have to have your Enfield library card though, to use it. You need your Enfield
I
library
got
card.
it.
If you don't have a library card, you can't just start using it.
So we should put a little thing on the back of our library cards that says Hoopla.
Well, I mean, we do have a lot of literature at the desk and stuff. I mean, we are promoting these, we're in a constant conversation and,
You said we're servicing 5 towns,
yeah.
and are we getting reimbursed from the other 4 towns?
Well, it's a little bit tricky because of the shared school district. So all the libraries are serve 5 towns. So I can look at the numbers, and again, this is a big conversation. I can look at the checkouts and know who's using the most. So it's not a conversation that I have to engage with the other communities yet, because I know that the bulk of the use is coming from Enfield. You see what I mean?
Well, yeah, I guess my question would probably be then, why wouldn't the school have the Hoopla subscription rather than us for the 5, for the students?
Yeah,
Just the-
so that's, no, so, it's not just for students, it's towns.
Right,
It's for whatever resident lives in those towns.
so,
I'd like-
so people in Canaan have Enfield library cards?
Yes, they do. And people in Enfield can have Canaan library cards. And you can also have one in Grafton.
Is it your impression that Enfield residents do in fact get library cards from the other towns?
Yes, they do.
So Canaan also has Hoopla, or?
No, they do
No, they
not.
don't.
We are the only one that
We're
carries
the
it,
only
and
one
that's
that
why,
have digital media.
like I said, it's a constant conversation that I'm having, and I'm always watching the numbers because it is gonna be a bigger
Well,
conversation.
yeah, it is gonna be a bigger conversation with what Tracy brought up, is that everybody's going to digital media because we don't have a library per se. It's a real big conversation.
Yeah, and again, I don't know the history of the agreement. All I know is that I've read the agreement because of the shared school district. That's why it is in place. Basically, there's 2 towns that don't have libraries. There's 3 of us that do.
Right.
We bought Hoopla with grant money, with the ARPA funds. That's how we brought it on board. I don't know that there was enough thought that went into that decision. It's a good service, yes, but I don't know that there was a long range thought process that went into that, because yes, we carry it. And, like I said, I can watch the number. I can see who's doing the checkouts.
Right.
On the administrative side, I can see that information. It hasn't swayed too much yet.
Okay.
Is there some kind of process that's in place where you can send a bill to Canaan?
No, because this is an agreement between 5 towns because of the shared school district. Our patrons can also go. We just chose to use our ARPA funds to bring on a digital service.
But the subscription fee for someone that uses Hoopla is part of your budget.
The,
Usage.
a patron, a patron is allowed to use these digital services.
Yes, and there's a regular fee to this budget for our residents to use Hoopla?
No, everybody's allowed 5 checkouts a month.
Okay.
Yeah, it's per checkout.
It's per
Per
check.
checkout.
And it just depends on what item you're accessing. Like I said, the audio is the most expensive at $3.99 a book. There are some books that you can check out, ebooks that are considered self-published are 99 cents.
And that is a fee that hits your budget.
Yes.
So it sounds like you've got a good way to track usage
Mhm,
for the future,
mhm.
so that if we found that Enfield crossed a tipping point, if you'd allow me to
Yeah.
use that,
Mhm.
where the other towns were perhaps not, for lack of a better term, pulling their own weight, you would recognize that.
Again, we don't ever want to put up a barrier to usage.
Right.
But yes, I can watch the numbers and I can see where, yes, I absolutely can. It is a big conversation. We're not there yet, but it is potentially something that we're gonna have to look at in the future.
Okay.
Is it possibly a conversation to have with the school district as opposed to the individual town?
Again, this isn't just for students though. It's,
Yes.
But the service is because of students. I mean, it goes
No.
back to the 5.
No adults.
Five
as
pounds.
well.
Say,
I realize that. but
Right.
This arrangement that's in place is because
because of the school
of the
district.
school district.
Right,
So
Is
it does
there-
go back to the
excuse me,
school.
Yes.
right.
Is there a contract that we signed with the other schools?
again, I don't know the history of it. I just have
So we need
seen
to-
the statement and
Yeah.
stuff and
Where is that?
So that's what we need, the
Yeah.
trustees should look at that.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is a big conversation and like I said, it's something the trustees and I have been having and I am constantly watching the numbers. Because digital, worst comes to worst, we just drop it. We just drop Hoopla.
Didn't I
But
hear
that would be the word. I mean, that would be the, the most.
Or to
drastic.
narrow its use to Enfield residents only.
Yeah, I
Right.
think there's a potential that we could switch over the patrons' numbers to be specific to Enfield if it wouldn't solve the issue. It would change the dynamic.
Understood. And it's out there, but it sounds like you have a way to monitor that.
Yeah, on the administrative end, I can
Yes.
watch it.
Did I hear something recently about court cases that are pending having to do with the distribution of digital media? And copyrights and
Oh, I don't know.
I think there's some stuff floating around. out
Again,
there.
that's on the business end for
It could get
the
out of
service that we're
control.
accessing. I don't deal with any of the copyrights or anything like that. That's a
Yeah.
part of their business model.
Although Kate took down all of her story
I did.
times, which had thousands and thousands of views on YouTube during the pandemic, because she had permission from the publishers to read their books and record them and put them out there for everybody. But after the pandemic, the publishers let you keep, not just you, for a while. But I think there are maybe some less
Rattling.
scrupulous people who are still posting things without publishers' permission. And that might be what you've heard about. You might, I mean, because you can go to YouTube and find all kinds of books that have been read and recorded by people.
Yeah.
And it's.
Well, I think
doubtful
that's
that they
what's
have
getting
permission.
Publishers' attention.
Yeah,
Is because that
yeah.
it's all out there for everybody to see. And I think they're gonna try to put the genie back in the bottle, but I don't know that they'll be successful with that.
They'll do it. Music went through it.
That's right.
Anything else on the library?
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I'd like to say, Kate, that you have a very nice library compared to a lot of little towns, and I think we should be proud of ourselves.
Oh, yeah, I think provide a good service.
Couple of years, we'll build you a bigger one.
Very lucky.
I've heard they don't wanna
I know
move
that
from
much.
the fire department once they get there,
Oh, wow.
because it sounds like we're getting goats and shuffleboards and.
Goats, I'm in.
A few weeks ago, I used the permission slip to go to Vin's.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. I mean, that cut the price down to, I think it was terrific.
That's good to hear. I mean, again, that's what we're trying to meet the needs of the user, you know, and those are simple ways that we can do that for
Yes.
people that we serve.
Great.
And you know, you don't have to stay for this whole meeting.
Oh.
You can run.
You saved her.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Are you ready for recreation? This one's, I guess, very similar. I know we'll have some more conversation around recreation, but really the big change here again is I put in to move Kevin from the 35 hours from last year to 40 hours. I do want to say from a management perspective, I know why we did the 35 hours, but it makes my job a lot more difficult and he gets the brunt end of stop working and go home.
It was a fight to get him 35 hours.
Yeah, no, I understand it.
That's a time. It was a struggle. And there was a lot of discussion about that, believe me.
Yeah.
Vigorous.
So there was,
Yeah.
you know, there's some money difference between 35 and 40, but really the town's getting the short end of that stick. Because
Right.
we're paying more per hour than we really would. I know all my other salaried employees, not that we push them to 50, 60 hours a week, but
Right.
they have a little bit more freedom to work what they need to work. And limiting to 35 made it more where I have to watch him closely and say, stop. So there was a lot of work to do. We can have some discussion about how it's been going, but there's been a lot of work done, a lot of things that he's been working on behind the scenes that people don't see. He spent a lot of time cleaning up RecDesk, our computer program, finishing some of Bridget's work, bringing all of our past due amounts up, getting everybody caught up on payments, getting that worked out. He's been working, we actually just talked to the select board about using RecDesk to schedule all buildings and facilities throughout the town and being able to open up more options of people to reserve and rent different spaces in the town for different events. So a lot of good work there. He's also been working with different groups, building relationships, putting events on. I think the big elephant in the room is the NYSL. I'll call them issues, but, there's some politics and different things going on there.
Soccer league.
Yeah, sports league.
Sports.
Yeah.
It's all sports.
We did do, Kevin
Right.
watched 10+ hours of meetings from last year to make sure we knew exactly what lane we should be in, and it was stated specifically at a select board meeting that we would not be running NYSL or getting too involved there. In the job description, it does say that he would assist them along with EVA and a whole bunch of other organizations. So, I guess long story short there's been a little bit of a rift of how much we get involved, how much we don't. I have been working with NYSL the last few months. And we're working through some issues to see how we can maybe take some of the administrative burden off of them and work a little bit differently in the future. But that's an ongoing conversation that we'll be having, working with their board.
Well, we certainly don't want you taking on that kind of administrative work. Wouldn't you say?
I agree.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
The problem with a lot of those sports leagues is the kids age out. And the people who are running it age out. And all of a sudden, they want you to take over a program, but they want you to take it over their way.
Well, that's been part of the conversation and not.
Right, and that's a different conversation, but that is a conversation that happens in a lot of youth sports leagues, is the people who are running it were also the administration, and as their kids age out, new people come in and they don't want to do what, you know, they say, take over the administration for me, but administrate it the way we want it administrated, and maybe not the way it has to be administrated.
Say, I can stop that conversation by saying that's the conversation I've had, and we will
Right.
be working through whether we take
Yeah.
that or not. What the conversation has been, if we take it, we're taking it. We're doing it the way we do it.
Right.
The fees will come in to support the program and the administration. We'll work through those details, but I just wanted to make sure that that's out there. There's been some back and forth of no, that's why we put that position in there. And then there's others that was no, it was to build more of the community events, bring all of the groups together. So that's really what we focused on this year was, you know, trying to build those events, working with other groups to try to, you know, there were a lot of things happening around town and they were all kind of happening on their own. We're trying to bring one central communication point. We're not trying to take over those projects or events, but let's partner with Enfield Recreation. So there's one point of contact that people know.
We're fortunate to have the chairperson of the rec board here. So my question is the rec board up with this? Are you on board with this approach towards things as far as the rec board is concerned?
I mean, from our conversations from the beginning, I mean, I looked back in our notes and, you know, I know that the Mascoma Youth Sports League is something that came up multiple times, even when the Recreation Commission was just envisioning it becoming a full-time position. And at that time, it was specifically stated in the minutes, we are no longer discussing Mascoma Youth Sports League. We are looking at engaging our community in a different way through recreation. We are not going to add something into something already new. We're setting ourselves up for failure. So it was literally taken off the table as a conversation as a whole. Like it was literally just, we are not discussing this any further. This is our focus. And so, you know, Kevin has been very much fulfilling a lot of those pieces, and that's kind of where we have been. I know as the chairperson, I have had questions based off of the fact that I know that Mascoma Youth Sports League is a 501c3, as a 501c3 that operates. And not only is it a 501c3, but it's also a regional position. Now, recreation clearly has some experience with working with a regional programming, which can be very difficult to work with as a whole because you're not really receiving any other support from any other communities. It's Enfield that is really putting in that work. And so, you know, my question to MYSL would also be, are other townships engaging with this in the way that Enfield has been expected to? Are other recreation directors, are other recreation programs participating? What other towns are we actually, you know, as far as I'm concerned, from what I can see, a lot of the recreation is actually hosted on Enfield fields that Enfield manages. And
Right.
so there is a piece of it that both as someone who lives here, as someone who has invested a lot in recreation, I can see where there is some conflict of interest in having our recreation person take over any aspect of it in that sense. So I do think that there was confusion on what that support meant and what the expectations were. But I also know that there is a really high burnout rate for a lot of volunteerism across the board. And it's not exclusive to MYSL. I know that much. You know, we've seen it in other places. And so I think that it's just exacerbated by the fact that you have a lot of young children, their parents they're growing up and then their parents are moving on to the next age and the next sport and the next thing. And they're going from youth sports to high school sports and then they transition out and it that directly impacts that.
Say, and I will say from a manager standpoint, and I've talked with the MYSL board too, that, you know, youth sports is a really important part of recreation for the town of Enfield. So we're gonna work through this, but we're also gonna make sure that that is a good program. And so we'll do what we need to do to make sure that that program lives on. what I'm here to talk about tonight is recreation as a whole, where we're going, looking at his salary and wanting to move in that direction. The rest of his budget, as we move through it, I can roll the numbers out, but it actually, if you take the rest of the budget that I highlighted there, it went down a little bit. We've just reallocated some money is really all that it boils down to in there. And I don't know if there was a purposeful reason for it last year or not, but some of the things, I was looking at winter recreation was budgeted 0. I think all that was put up in programming. We pulled it back down just a little bit more for some data tracking to know where the money's going and what we're spending on what, but
So it's not as though we're doing something brand new in winter.
no, we cut down recreation programming by $5,700. And we put some money in winter recreation, we put some money in summer recreation, we put some money in, information management. Doing posters and some of those things to get a little bit more word out of what's happening in town. And so we just reallocated some of that money throughout the budget.
One thing I'll say about winter, and I dug into it a little bit more, why it was at 0, is because most of the winter programming went to the regional position, which was Bridget, so that went into her budget, and this would have been what Ed Winters was working with. So he didn't do anything in the winter, it was Bridget that did that, because she works with the school to do the ski and ride program to Whaleback and then the elementary cross country.
Is Whaleback still offering residents of Enfield a discount?
Yes, I bought my pass last week.
If you buy a full price pass, you get the discount. If you get an already discounted one, it does not give you a discount.
Yeah.
Because I asked that about our school program, because every single school gets charged $240 for the youth program. And I was like, I thought Enfield got one, and they're like, it's already discounted enough that they're not making anything on the school. They're just trying to get skiing back.
But keeping in mind that Enfield is the town that has offered them the tax abatement,
That's right.
and therefore any favors should be in Enfield's direction.
Which,
Your full price passes are definitely discounted.
and a lot of the kids in Enfield already get a discount because they're not signing up for lessons. Or that because they already have oil back here, they've probably already learned, they already have the equipment. So all they're paying for is to get on the mountain, and I don't remember the broke down cost, but it's like, I think it's almost less than $100 for those kids to go for 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yeah.
So they do get it.
They knock those tickets down to cost pretty much. So,
Yeah.
all they're trying to do is break even.
So if we're now have a full-time rec director, correct? Whereas before we shared it with Canaan, am I right? Okay.
Well, yeah.
In theory.
There were 2 different positions. We still had one part-time Enfield rec, and then there was one part-time shared
Okay,
regional. So there were actually still 2 positions that were part-time.
okay.
I just took both of them.
That's what was folded into Kevin.
Yeah.
So when we offer programs and out-of-town families or kids register, is there a price differential for resident, non-resident?
Depends. If it's something that involves the school,
Mhm.
that gets tricky.
Yeah.
Because I can't offer EVS a discount on the ski and ride program and then charge CES, right? I can't charge their school a different amount because it's the same school district. So like on our summer camp, heck yeah, we do.
Okay.
They pay a non-resident fee, Enfield kids pay a resident fee. But when it gets to stuff that's involved kind of with the school, like the cross-country ski and the whaleback thing, no. Just
So
because,
basically that's a pass-through though, because,
Well, and some of those are still shared. I mean, the
Yeah.
cross-country ski one's a perfect example that it's hosted in Canaan and people from over there teach it, and our kids don't get charged any different. So there's some of those back and forth, but some of the ones we need to. I mean, Enfield residents are paying for Kevin, they're paying for the equipment. There should be some cost share, so I guess it's in semantics how you do it. We're either charging them more, or Enfield kids already prepaid part of their dues is kind of the way I look at it, is it's already partially prepaid. We really, we're not trying to make revenue off these programs. Again, we're trying to break even and be able to sustain the programs year after year without burdening the taxpayers even more.
Just one comment. The summer program was a lot more vibrant last summer than it had been in the past. And I think it's come back to where it was 4 or 5 years ago.
So the reason we've had such a success with summer program last year is, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, they no longer are doing the summer program up at EVS. So
Right.
that puts all those, so technically we're the only summer camp
Right.
in the area. I know Whaleback got one that's like 2 weeks for kids that didn't get it. We, this year for summer camp, had at least 40 kids on the wait list, and we had 40 kids in every day, so.
Yeah.
It was.
Are you
Well,
planning to
that's-
expand it?
What?
Are you planning to expand it for next year?
It's hard because trying to get employees to run it so we can, and finding a facility big enough. We're already to the point with 40 kids that they barely fit under the pavilion at Hughes Park. So if we were to expand it, it would have to be, I don't know where in town.
Well, we've had some brief discussions. I know I've had some, Kevin has had a little bit of talking with Whaleback about ways that we can not merge the programs, but work together to be able to maybe transport some kids over there to have a little bit bigger, more robust program. Maybe trade kids for a day, so they're doing something different than they normally do. Some of those things where we can work together to make the program better for both organizations.
Have you thought about going more than 6 weeks?
Yeah, the problem that I ran into last summer was the camp director, assistant camp director, and all the employees were college students and teachers, so they still wanted to have a summer.
Okay.
And it got to the point where like they worked their whole entire summer, 40 hours, and they're like, so.
Good answer.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about expanding it, and to add what Ed said, something I've talked to Alex about, we only had one conversation because we kind of were like, let's wait till it gets closer and I can figure it out. Webb does a adventure camp for, I think it's 5 or 6 weeks, and I feel with what Whaleback is putting in with their disc golf, their trails that they have, and just stuff they have, that would be an option for Enfield kids to get the older kids to go to that, and then have the younger kids staying under the pavilion, because then trying to keep 12-year-olds under a pavilion all summer long when they just want to go play and run around in the park is kind of hard. So, I mean, I think if we could get that worked out, maybe it'd be a Whaleback Enfield Recreation partnered event. I'd like to see that develop. Will they be willing to do that? I don't know. We have small conversation, but it's my thought.
Remind them of the tax.
They're looking for revenue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, and they've been talking for years about, we've got to do something other than winter. So,
Yeah, I've talked with their CEO up there, and they're definitely open to having these discussions and seeing how we can work together to make both camps better.
Yeah.
Out of the 40 that were in the program, how many were Enfield residents?
So the first sign up was first come, first serve, because the Canaan kids, other kids are paying they're paying the non-resident fee. So if you want to pay that, go ahead and pay that. It's just bringing more to us. And then once we started getting kids dropping out on the wait list, I only was offering it to Enfield kids. Canaan kids only got it offered if I went through the whole list of Enfield kids and they were like, nope, we don't want to go. So then I offered it to Canaan kids. And that only happened 1 week this year, and that was 4th of July week, because every parent I called was like, oh, well, since they didn't have camp, we decided to go on vacation. So that was the only time it happened.
Are you considering like Lebanon to have Enfield residents be able to sign up earlier?
What do you mean?
like in Lebanon, if you're from Lebanon, you can sign up for Lebanon camps starting, say, February 1st. And then non-residents can't sign up until March 1st, but by then it's all full.
It's an option.
And
Never
that's,
thought of
that's,
it.
Hanover does the same thing, Lebanon does that,
sense.
they'll do that.
I think the reason it was just a kind of first come, first serve was because that was Bridget's.
That was the changeover.
Well,
yeah,
But that's, yeah.
That was
You have a late
Bridget's.
start.
And
Yeah, yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
we were
yeah.
more
Like start.
worried about not having spots for kids.
Right.
Like the primary concern was
Exactly.
making sure that there was that summer care available for Enfield residents,
Right.
because it's critical for parents, so.
But it is something we can definitely explore. I'm not opposed to it at all. It would be,
It wouldn't be something new, all the other towns are doing.
right. I just don't know if Rec Desk would has a filter or something that would allow that where I can say,
We can do it. We'll figure it out.
true, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
if
that's
we
a
have
good
to go
idea.
in and-
We might make a few extra dollars with non-Enfield kids, but I
But
think
the
our
point is servicing
primary.
the
Probably
Enfield
just the
residents.
Enfield.
Yeah.
It's a service.
That's right.
So we can look into that.
I will say this, that it's always been difficult at the middle school when you merge the kids coming from Enfield and the kids coming from Canaan. Because they've been together for a number of years, usually 5 years, a lot of them. And so they've got their friends and so on. And so their placements in the middle school, 5th grade, they do very carefully so that they get a mix and so on. So when you mix them in recreation, that alleviates that a little bit. And I'm not saying that we can let that rule our budget, but it isn't a bad thing.
No.
Because we're all in this together. And it is really hard for some kids, they can't, it's like they're better than us or we're better than them.
Well, and
It's
we
like,
need
oh
to
my
do what we
gosh.
can do to work together.
Yeah.
We'll be working on that more.
So all other towns, to my knowledge, youth sports is run through rec departments. I know there's the complexity with MYSL. But putting that aside for a second, I'm looking at the long-term vision. What does this town want to do with youth sports?
Well, I think it's looking at exactly what we've already talked about. We're not gonna come in and push a nonprofit out of the way to
Right.
take over, but we're also not gonna let it fail. So we're already talking about, watching and working with people to make sure that it is robust as we can. But I do know that the administrative side of it is the hard work and the part that's hard to keep going. And so if we need to move in that direction, we're willing to do the work to figure out what it would take to make sure we can stand that up. Like I said, it's important to our citizens to make sure that we have those programs available.
It's extremely important. It's an attraction to the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have brought it to a point finally where it is a viable department within the town. And anything we can do to help that move along and continue to progress is all to the good as far as the town is concerned.
And statistically, we know when they study it, that you have fewer police calls and tapping those services if you have programs for kids, because they're busy and they're vested in your town. So it may cost you money on the one hand, but it might
But save
save you on the other.
Oh, it's-
well,
And
money
that's
well
how we
spent.
got Shaker Park, is
That-
pushing that concept.
Yeah, that goes back, my degree is actually in sports management, so I know all about that with the law and whatnot. 95% of kids do youth sports for relationships. When you build relationships, kids are going and hanging out at their buddy's house with multiple kids. There's parents there watching them and supervising them. So yeah, having youth sports and programs builds these relationships where then kids aren't hanging out under Hughes Park Pavilion, breaking glass bottles and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, not opposed to it. I just will say that adding MYSL, we have to look and also realize that these towns that the rec department is running the youth sports, they're also not running things like I'm doing, like building rentals. They're not working with the police department to do that stuff, so.
They have multiple people in
And
their
they have
departments.
lots of
Lebanon
people,
has what,
too.
2.5, three
Three.
people,
Lebanon-
and that
Lebanon
doesn't
has
even
like-
include any seasonal. I mean, that's,
Oh,
they have a full,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
we'll have to
We have
work
4 or
on is
5.
so they have
balancing
capacity.
the workload and how we do that up.
I think that recreation is just the core of a healthy town. I really believe that.
What did you get for us 70-year-olds, right?
Well, I was just gonna say that.
So I actually, over Black Friday, had bought me 2 tablets. I am going to start taking attendance for the current already senior citizen classes we have.
Oh,
That
you
happened.
mean stretch?
Well, we have stretching, we have yoga, we have line dancing. I'm gonna get all those people, because those are the ones that are actively doing something in this town. And I'm gonna see what they think, and then we can develop these other programs with it, because I'll be completely honest, I don't know what you guys wanna do, like, I don't know what interests you, so if you get to know the people that are active, they will give you other things that they would like to do. And then that might be something like you might like to do. So then I offered that, like, right now I have a lady who's renting the community building twice a month. Doing, they're called sip and paints. And every single one of hers is sold out before I even get a chance to promote it. So.
Why have I not heard?
So I'm currently like working with her because she has a full-time job also, so to organize these classes is a lot. So I am working with her right now on how I can do it where she can still offer herself and run her business, but then she can also offer to us. So I'm going through that. I am exploring other things for,
How about active stuff for seniors? And I like snowshoeing
we are getting, Shaker Ball Field has a walking path around it. We're getting that reestablished. And then we are also, I kind of have started building a relationship with, right, guy, great, from Smith Pond. And he is more than willing to offer the area where if we want to go out, like say a Saturday morning snowshoe up to Smith Pond, have a table with hot cocoa, coffee, whatever.
that.
Yeah, so that's
We're
definitely in the,
There's a Lebanon rec, speaking of Lebanon. Yes, Savvy, I think it's Savvy Seniors. When we first moved here, we used to hurry to try to get to sign up. But there's people lined up.
Well,
Every
I'd also say, if you know somebody that would be willing to lead a snowshoe hike every so often, we would be more than happy to help promote that and put it together and bring it together, but we
Back
don't
to
have the personnel
volunteers.
to just do it all.
ooh, that's a hard word, volunteer. That's the hardest thing to get right now, are volunteers. So that's your struggle.
If you want to go snowshoeing, we'll
Do it.
get a bunch of people taking something.
Do we know who grooms
Well,
who grooms that trail that is going from, 4A down into Smith Pond?
These cross-country ski trails.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a cross-country ski trail, but, so you know, there's a trail around Smith Pond, right? Okay, one of the runs on the way back from the easement lawn is essentially wide. It is not really walking trail, it's full-size truck wide. Last year, somebody groomed that.
Oh, that was, right. That was one.
Dr. Baker did.
Yeah, because that was, that path there is his path, how he got up to build the dams.
Right.
So because when we went up and hiked with him and talked with him, he doesn't bring those necessarily, because he'd rather people stay on like in the forest on that kind of stuff. And I will say, I walked that way back to my vehicle one time, and it is ticks and then it's mud, it is, I would not even have my worst enemy go that way, because it's really honestly, it sucked, and I had my dog and we took 31 ticks off
Oh,
my dog.
my.
So, yeah, it's not a great,
No, but in
In the winter.
the winter.
yeah.
And so,
Well, the ticks
I was just
survive in the
curious
winter.
because you said snow.
Will you be coordinating with the folks who have been grooming Mascoma in the wintertime?
The lake, yep, we had a meeting with them 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, the skating
Yeah, great.
association will be doing that, but the
Yes.
town is working with them.
Yeah,
Me and
the town is
Kevin
working.
met with them, with Jim
Great.
Taylor, to make sure that we coordinated everything to keep that going.
Terrific.
Yeah, because we want to, me and that organization, we want to do like a skate day and like an education day and whatnot, like they normally do. And I kind of want to expand it more. I come from a hockey background, so frozen ice is my thing. And I would love to get like a stick and puck on that also. So we're trying to find how many people would be interested. Is it viable to buy the nets and the little walls? Because when you buy the nets on the ice, you can't go with the plastic ones because that puck hits it, it's shattered, it's done.
Right.
So you have to go with the metal ones. The metal ones are,
Not cheap.
nope. They're very expensive. You have to, and then when you get the metal ones, you have to actually lace the nets on it. And that's a trade on its own to do. So we're exploring.
You just learn to do it like I did.
See, we have a volunteer.
Oh, I know how to
And the
lace the
family.
nets
Oh,
on.
yeah. Yeah.
I've
Now,
done a few nets.
optimistically, we're going to be putting a very nice sidewalk from downtown.
Mhm.
Once we have the grant. It's a when, it's not an if, it's a when. All the way down to as far as the ballpark, am I correct?
It's not a sidewalk. It'll be a trail.
A trail.
And it'll go
Therefore
down to-
groomable
It'll go
in the
to
wintertime.
It'll pretty much go to La Salette.
and across this.
Is it gonna go underneath?
Across now, and then there's a sidewalk on the
And
other
there's a
side
sidewalk
already.
on the
We
other
may, if we have enough money, we may.
So hopefully we can groom that as well
Oh, yeah.
when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is a opportunity every which way you look at it. I mean, you
is.
can snowshoe it, you can cross-country ski it. I mean, and it also gives it,
Part of the grant.
right, once that gets done, gives us that option that once we have that trail and everything reestablished at Shaker Ball Field, you can almost make it a loop. You could park up at the beach, you could skate or go all the way down, you get onto the park, go make your loop around the park, come right back. I mean, it adds
It is
a bunch of.
great possibilities.
And it also has summer opportunities. I mean, you could, I know in my hometown, they call them coffee walks. That's what the seniors do. The Parks and Rec Department in my town supplies coffee in the morning. And they're at a park and they literally just it's whoever comes, bring your friends, walk the park, get you out and about. So that's opportunities that I have.
We need
So
coffee.
you have this nice pavilion down by the lake, you could probably use it for that.
Yeah, and that's a great opportunity where you can put your table under there, your coffee, there's outlets, there's power.
So the trail you're talking about, that would then also take the runners off 4A, right?
Yes,
Bingo.
Yes.
that's the goal of that, is to get it.
Because there's a lot of people
Potentially, you
running
could take
and
some
walking
bicyclists off 4A as well.
The goal is to take bikes and,
Bikes.
I mean, it would be rail trail quality.
Yeah.
Trail, so I mean,
Okay.
you could ride
That's
your
good.
road bike.
The ability to go down Shaker Boulevard, come around and hop on that trail, 100% different than what it is right now when you have to do 4A.
Mhm.
Right.
So the trail,
So how- the
around
trail
the
to La
Shaker
Salette.
Rec Park,
Yeah.
is that gonna be taken
And then you
out
would have to
from
get back
balance
on
and
4A to
done
do
now?
the
We'll
last-
talk
For
about that.
brief
a little
stretch.
bit. It's on your.
All
sheet.
right.
Jump
Well, I
on the
haven't-
trail
I've
at
been
La
away,
Salette,
so
and you'd
I'm
be
just
in a
barely
much
back.
safer place
It depends how we fund it on
You
what
jump on a
that.
trail at La Salette.
Okay,
in the parking lot.
Yeah,
So-
we'll talk about that soon.
this is just an idea.
You
like,
pick it up
for the
in the parking
walking
lot
on the
and it
trail
continues.
thing.
You
Like,
just
we
think
talked about this.
Basically,
in our church.
over
following,
Shaker Boulevard.
We need
it's
one
following
conversation.
the line that was created for, the
Septic,
septic line.
the septic line.
Yeah, it's our,
First,
that
All right.
little plateau.
our
of there
septic
is our
right away.
Force main for our sewer
So,
line.
so it would essentially go to La Salette and that stuff.
It would go to La Salette. I've been working with them. There's some changes going on there right now, but
Yeah.
working with them to get a right of way across the front and then put the flashing lights to cross and hit the sidewalk that goes along down to the Shaker Museum.
Better get that quickly.
Okay.
I've got a few people entrenched there that they're working through some things, but they said if something happens, they'll make sure that we work on that before anything big happens. That's all I'm gonna say.
Right.
I think that whatever would happen with La Salette would go through a planning board and be well known by everyone.
The trail doesn't have to go there, so.
It doesn't
Trail
have to.
first, get the trail first.
The, there was an activity last winter on the hill too. Was that organized by the police department?
Oh,
Yeah, this flooding radar.
the radar run,
Was
Yep.
That was done by the police department?
well,
It was,
half
done-
and half.
I was just gonna
I
say,
think.
it was police and,
I thought the church did a grant for that.
yeah, because there's been years prior where the church provides snacks. Actually,
Yeah.
I think, or was it last year that Friends of Mascoma provided snacks
It
or
was
something? There's always a community partnership between the police department and Friends of Mascoma or the Lutheran
Do you know
Church
about that?
for that, for an annual event that we do,
We'll
yes.
continue building it.
Because the kids like it when, you know, go down see who went fastest.
Yeah. Those, I call them quirky events, but those different little events that don't happen everywhere are the ones that will actually draw people to your town. If you're doing the same event that everybody else does, you're not gonna get a bunch of people, but you do something that's different and you'll get people here. You can publicize the church, you can make a bigger day out of it. It really helps our downtown businesses. The one that I use as an example now is the Halloween event that Kevin put together. There were over 400 kids that showed up. A lot of things happening. Like everybody else, I figured out on the way home, we stopped to get a pizza because we didn't want to cook, and that restaurants were packed with little kids with costumes on. So it's good for everybody to do that. It's great for the families. It's good for community. It's good for the businesses. So we will continue doing those types of events. Anything else on recreation?
So one idea we had at church that we haven't got off the ground yet, because again, it's volunteers. And how many things can you volunteer for? But it's a simple concept, and because it's an alliteration, it sticks in people's minds. But we were thinking on the rail trail opposite the church, we could do walking Wednesdays. So that could be something that could be geared to older people that are out of work, you know, retired out of work. Because right now it'd have to be daylight.
Well, that's a great thing. That's really what we're trying to do with this position is not take over and run
Right.
every event, but
Right.
grab the
Right.
church, for example, that wants to do this, and we will help you
Yeah.
organize that and publicize it and get some people there and track some data to see if it's worthwhile, and
Or we might,
maybe talk with other community
Piggyback off
partners to
you.
get some coffee down there and.
coffee we can do, but, you know, that can even be, you might be able to set up a schedule of different people leading it different weeks.
Mhm.
So that maybe you learn a little history one week, or you learn, you know, different things.
Yep.
It can be fun.
What is under repair and service contracts?
Rec desk.
Okay.
That's the $2,900 one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rec desk. Which I almost put in the wrong line this year. That's why I know.
Is beach maintenance just a porta potty? For $850, what's beach maintenance?
So beach maintenance, from what I understand, is they're always constantly fighting the erosion that happens going
Okay.
down that hill. So, from what I've heard from Rick, is it's always bringing in a little bit of sand every year. It's filling in that crater. It literally is a crater. When we had the movie down at the beach, it was this deep with the erosion. So yeah, it's a lot of keeping that up. I know this year they bought new buoys. That's why it's way over, because I think the other ones, once they got them out, they realized they were not good enough. So it was something that just had to be purchased. So yeah, that's that one.
Well, and you will see that throughout the budget, but in recreation, again, that there's a increased priority on maintenance of parks and everything, trying to bring things back up to where they need to be.
Anything else? Anybody?
No, the rec department's doing great. Keep going, please. Hello, sky's the
Sounds good, and everywhere I go, you're certainly a presence there, and that's.
Is that because I'm tall?
Yeah.
Because I stick out.
Watch for the newsletter. There's a picture
Oh, no.
Kevin in there.
In your elf outfit.
Yeah.
You shouldn't.
No.
It will be in the newsletter.
I'm sure.
Oh, good.
For you, those that were at the lighting, he was helping Mrs. Claus at the lighting of the community Christmas tree on Saturday night.
It, yeah. It was,
It's in the-
I will say that I am, and me and Ed already talked about this actually yesterday. I'm kind of just floating through Christmas right now, cause I've stepped and wanted to do things and I've stepped on toes in town, so I want to see how things run, see how things go, and then slowly put my input on, because if you go too hard, I learned this town's not a big change town. So when you suggest things, sometimes you step on toes too hard and you get bit by the dog. So,
The outing club has guns.
yeah. Hey, I'm on their good side, so I'm not worried about them.
Was
No,
Santa there?
no, so Dawn, who puts it on, likes to be Mrs. Claus. She doesn't think Mrs. Claus gets enough publicity because Santa Claus is gonna be at the Enfield or the Outing Club's Christmas. So she's trying to bring, that's why I went as Buddy the Elf, because I came as Santa's helper and she was obviously Santa's partner, because Santa's busy right now building all those toys for the good little boys and girls.
You hear the-
If you want. But yeah, so I like the idea she has, because if you go anywhere for Christmas, it's Santa, 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 Santa. So I think it is kind of cool that she does Mrs. Claus and then we have an elf there. But I do see the importance of Santa, but I'd like to get Santa more in other events later in the month.
So who does the tree? The town does.
Yes, the town lights the tree.
Okay.
The lighting ceremony is, from what I have gathered, the lighting ceremony has always been the Eva and the recreation department doing it together. That's why Dawn's heavily involved in it, because she organizes the whole
Well, we
month
work
of
with
them.
Dawn too.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
very into Christmas and.
Well, see, it used to be a one day event
Mhm.
and, yeah,
That was.
then
the
there was
evil
nothing
thing.
during COVID. And then it started last year with having events throughout the month.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a very long list of things happening this month and yeah,
I saw that. That's great. Very impressive.
Yeah.
we'll continue working on those and seeing how it goes.
But I
and
didn't know
Looking at
you
how
would
we
have
can do it
taken
different
out
next
the
year,
lighting.
to add to, not to.
Think it's time to move on?
Fund
Yeah.
balance.
So these are ideas I put together. I don't have a magic fund balance number for you tonight that we can talk about. Here's what we have to spend. What I really wanted to do was throw some ideas out, things we can do. Highlight a few things that are in the budget already that we may be able to pull out. There's not a lot there, but there's some other projects we've talked about that I think we can possibly pay for with fund balance and not have to increase the budget. So, the top section, the special projects are things that we've really already talked about. The website is in the budget right now. I think we budgeted 16,000 for that. We can knock that down to 8,000 and I do, pending what comes from fund balance, it may be something that we can pay for with fund balance and get it out. It is a one-time expense to do the upgrade. There will be an ongoing maintenance fee for the website, but we can put that in the
How'd
budget.
that go from 16 to 8?
It's less than I thought it was gonna be.
like that.
Like I told you guys last meeting, we're looking at adding the planning section to that, which would actually push it up maybe a little over the 16. I did not put that in as a fund balance thing because depending on which program we go to, if we're in that $10,000 range, that's an ongoing annual cost to keep that. So it's not a one-time budgetary item.
Remind me, fund balance expenses have to be voted on or not voted?
What we can do, we've gotten DRA involved in this, and they said what we can do is put in the budget an amount from fund balance and then put these in the budget, and it'll be an offsetting revenue.
So
Okay,
it's not a warrant article.
it's
part
not
of
a
the
warrant
budget.
article, got it.
It's a part of the budget itself.
Right. Didn't we used to have to vote on that?
Only when we didn't put it in the budget.
Yeah, you don't put it in the
If
budget.
you don't put it in the
would
budget,
do
you have to do
individual
it
ones.
separate expense. It's a
Okay,
use.
So I would
As opposed to an
say-
offset.
put it in the budget.
I would say depending on what it is and what
Yes.
you want to do, you make that decision. If you put it in the budget, you present it very clearly when you present the budget of what you're doing, so people know that that's what we're doing.
Because the biggest one we did was paying off the sewer. Well, you wanted that to be a warrant article.
Yeah.
Because that had a lot of, had to be explained.
Yeah, if you have a major expense, it'd be best to put it as a warrant article. If you're knocking off these $8,000,
Right.
this little stuff, I probably best to put it in the budget. The second one down is, the master planning task force has asked for $25,000 to continue the next 5 chapters of the master plan. The compensation study we talked about.
Yep.
I ticked that up just a little bit to make sure we had enough in there to cover. And then strategic planning as well. I'm working with a few groups. I still have not gotten a price. I talked with the Strategic Governance Center. They decided they didn't want to bid or participate in that process. So I'm talking with another consultant, hopefully getting a price soon. And then I'm also working with Dartmouth to see if we can work with some of their students to help facilitate those conversations.
Now, are we hiring someone to do the compensation study?
That's what this would be.
Yeah.
That's what this would be funded for. I think it would be best to go with a professional outfit outside of the town to do that stuff.
And independent.
And it would be a phased study, as you had described it in.
No, the first one would be townwide. We haven't done one since the early 2000s or 2013, I think was the last one. So it would be a major all encompassing. And then we can have that discussion. Do we want to wait every 5 years or something and do this big one? Or do we want to do, you know,
Rolling
Section.
1/3
incremental
on every
reviews.
year, every other year, and just kind of keep it all up to date.
So I have another question. So remember bending the curve, right? The line is nicely going up. We're near 12%. If we don't bend the curve, it looks really bad. Does the bending of so use of undesignated fund balance, does the select board get to decide if you want to use that as an offset to lower tax rates?
Yeah, they can also do, it's,
Like, we don't
any
have,
of this is going to be theirs.
right, what I'm saying is I meant, some of this is putting it in the budget, but the select board could also just say, hey, we had undesignated fund balance last year of X amount of dollars. We're gonna take half of it and put it towards offsetting taxes.
Yeah.
That's correct, right?
In theory,
We will have a.
If they want to do that.
That's how we got.
Well, yeah. What I'm saying is,
Well, and
Not
I think it's,
necessarily. So
they
this
could
is,
come in with a different budget,
a completely different, but
a completely different.
hold on,
budget.
but to Nancy's point, that is not how we got in the hole last time, right?
No,
no.
Part of it was.
Well, I think we have.
This is
Where it
only,
started.
this is only using the undesignated fund balance from last year and using part of it
right,
To offset the tax.
for this year, But you don't do that, you wouldn't offset it more than what it was,
no,
because then you get yourself in trouble.
Right.
Nor would you make it recurring.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I
Make
don't think we delve into a bunch
We
of
don't use cash.
hypotheticals.
no,
This has nothing to do with
Right.
using, oh, we have a lot in the bank account, let's just lower the budget.
no.
No, our goal is to stay around the 12% fund balance based on the equation that we have set up in
Right.
our policy. So
Right. And-
what we don't want to do, and me and Dimitri have talked about this a little bit, is we don't want to get into the 13, 14. where
14,
we've been
15,
telling-
16.
Right.
When you,
People.
Yes.
the funds that,
Right.
okay, all
So
right.
we want to stay around that
12.
12%
Right.
that we've been.
And so-
That can be used. to-
Right.
Yeah.
Are
So-
the tax bills ready to go out soon?
And
Tax
that-
They already went out, I paid,
They went out, yep.
I didn't get mine.
But we don't get
No,
the
they,
mail.
they just
No mail sale.
went out,
Yeah.
like
oh,
just.
if you
went
do
out.
the electronic one. You get
Yeah,
that
they're
like
all on
weeks
the
earlier.
computer if you want to see.
Yeah.
Great.
And we thank you for paying your tax bill early.
No, I schedule.
You know what's
Um,
interesting in Florida? You get a tax bill, and if you pay by this date in November, it's the least. And if you pay by
Yeah.
this date, let's say in December, it's a little more.
Yeah.
If you pay in January, it's more, and then it goes and kicks into
Going
the
off.
interest.
Right.
Talk about a town that doesn't.
So
like
that
change.
encourages people to pay up early.
Well, I don't know that we can legally do.
I know, but I just find it interesting
Yeah.
that it's a
Yeah.
great tool.
Oh, but it's
Yeah.
Florida. What do you want in Florida?
So what Ed and I talked about was there's been a lot of focus on that undesignated fund balance. It's been going up very sharp.
Right.
Right? It would almost be better if it actually went down a little bit versus going up a lot.
Oh, yeah, but I think you want to keep that 12%.
Keep
Yeah,
it
you
at
wanna
that.
keep-
12%.
Right.
You
but
don't
that's
want-
almost impossible to do though.
Well, you don't want your undesignated to bring it below. The
Well-
use of undesignated, you do not want it to bring it below the 12.
And what we're gonna need to do, I've been looking at this.
Right.
And we'll be working with Elise over the next couple of weeks, but we almost need to work 1 year in arrears using the audited financials from last year
Right.
to look at where we're sitting at fund balance.
Yeah.
If we know we have a huge fund balance coming in, it's still unaudited, and there's been times when they've
Right.
made major changes
yeah.
in that, so we need to be really careful on that, but.
Right.
If we have a large amount, then we can work together to say, I
Because you
think
know-
we're safe.
Right,
using
but-
this amount.
You should
The
know
only-
where it's coming from.
Right, but the only way to really keep it at 12 is for the select board to say, hey, this amount over 12 is gonna go to next year to offset taxes, right?
No,
No? So how else would you do it?
what we've been talking.
Right
about
here.
is we look at
This
these
stuff.
one-time projects and we put it in the budget as a revenue
Okay.
source,
What,
and
which
then we
is,
spend it.
which is kind of the same thing.
It is, I would definitely not put it in there as an offset of tax revenue, because that's where you start getting yourself in trouble.
Yep.
Right.
You put it in to do special projects or one-time projects, one-time purchases.
Yeah,
And
I
I'd
think it's
much rather
very
look at
dangerous
the-
to start offsetting taxes.
And the
Because
12%
if the
is a
citizenry
guide.
starts liking that idea,
Right. The 12% is a guide.
That's what we get.
If
Zeroed
you're
out.
right, if your audited statement from last year has you at 12%. Then that's where you want to be.
That's what you want to start using. I
That's
know
what you
we've been
want to start
using-
using and
We've
not,
been using the current year too,
Right.
to say, hey, we're getting there.
right,
Now that we're getting there, we really should be using last year's audited statements to say,
Right.
here's where we're at. We have this much to spend. And then we'll get our audited statements from this year and we can use that next year going through the budget process.
yeah, I agree, because just because at the end of the year, you say you've got 350,000. The auditors may come in and say, no, we're taking 200 of it,
They've done.
and they've done it before, they can do it again.
Why would they do that? Just because they find something in the books that's.
Yeah, they do
They-
adjustments and they make things
Right.
and they, oh, this wasn't
This
done,
was-
so you need to do it.
They
this way.
reappropriate.
They find encumbrances that weren't satisfied.
funds.
Every
Right,
year, it's
exactly.
either a little more than we expected it to be or a little less based on
Right.
auditors adjustments.
Okay, and the auditor usually has its report by when?
It'll be
September.
September, yeah. So it'll be the
Right.
beginning of budget last year. So we should be working off the 2021 audited
Right.
financials for this year.
So then that actually works out well.
It gives you a number going through the budget season to know what you can or cannot use.
And your explanation is because we're trying to keep it at 12%. And the audited statement says we're at 12% from last year, so that's what we're trying to keep it at.
Got it. I'm following.
So we'll get that number. I do think there's a little bit of that. Let's use last year, for example, if we're looking at, we're 400 to 500,000, you think coming into the year. I think it'd be safe to use 100,000. Try to keep that number from spiking in the next year, but, if we're coming in at 200,000 or 300,000, we probably want to just lay low, let it happen, let the auditor do its job. We'll move on. So I will be working with Elisa this week to make sure that we get everything lined out. I wanted to present some projects to you. Some of them have prices, the last three don't, if you look at your list. We just want to follow down. These are some other spending options that we have. some of these, a lot of these are in the budget, or at least the first few, they're smaller money, but computer hardware, we budget to buy computers every year, but we increase this year because we have more to do, because we have some really old computers, so I think we can safely offset 300,000 or 3,000 without seeing a big change. The cemetery sign work we talked about last time, I talked with Bridget. If we designated $6,500 from fund balance to that, I think we can do every sign in the town, just knock that project out and get it done.
That's a great idea.
That's the way to do it. Yeah, not the.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Multi-year approach,
Yeah.
where you have to analyze which one's worse.
And with the way we can do encumbrances, it gives the sign person 2 years to do that, to try to get it done. So they can give it to them and say,
Yeah.
get it done. So I thought that was a good way to possibly use that money. Special projects, we have the emergency operations plan in there. It's a one-time expense.
Which may be satisfied by a grant, we understand, at some point.
Some of it possibly, but instead of putting it on the tax rate, we can put it in fund balance, and if it doesn't get spent, it doesn't get spent, still. And then other ones that I just brought up to some people last week, they're looking at was, community building. I think they were planning on redoing the floors, but I also talked about that for the rock facade out front that's falling apart. You know, maybe they can get some prices on there. That might be a special project we can do to keep improving the community building. And then I can let Kevin talk about it, but, we noticed this year doing some inspections that we need to replace the backstop at Hughes Park. They have noticed it's leaning.
the wrong way.
Kevin did some inspections and the welds are starting to break on it. So it's headed in a place where we need to do some work on it.
Behind home.
It's pink. And
It's the tall fence behind home plate.
Yeah, yeah.
preventing foul balls.
Have you had anyone look at it?
I actually have, so I do have an estimated price that they shot me. I talked to Springfield Fence out of Springfield, Vermont, which Jim gave me their contact info. They said it could be anywhere up to $9,000 if the whole thing needs replaced, which from what I've gathered, talking to town employees who have been here forever, it's never been touched since it was put in. So those are something that needs to be, and I'm sure there's multiple kids that have climbed on it, things hang off of it. There's a Christmas tree on it right now, that I'm really surprised someone was brave enough to climb up it, because,
Kidding?
yeah, it's, yeah, I mean, if you go look at it, there's one pole that's leaning a good 6 to 7 inches farther in than the rest of them, and if you look at all the welds on that, it's broke. And what I can tell from it and what Jim can tell from when we looked at it is the welds weren't that good in the first place because you're welding galvanized steel, which is sucks if you've ever tried to do it. And there's holes in the welds, so water obviously has gone into it, frozen for,
Is this something that they think needs to be replaced?
they won't know until they come out. I
Okay,
just
they
called
haven't been
them.
out to look at it.
Yeah, I just called them because me and Ed were talking about it and I was like, let me just get a ballpark and
Yeah, I'd look at that $9,000 figure for complete replacement, and if we can save money, we save money.
They're a very credible outfit.
Yeah.
And when they come out to look at it, you'll get a very honest price.
Yeah, and me and Jim kind of talked to him and said, hey, when you're in the neighborhood, since it's not gonna be something that's done tomorrow, we say, hey, if you're just in the neighborhood, if you wouldn't mind popping through, taking a look at it, seeing what needs done. And Jim said they've done that multiple times for him, so he goes, I don't see why they wouldn't.
The thing about that spot is it's a highly visible piece of town.
Uh-huh.
And it looks and has for quite a while pretty lousy.
Mhm.
Which kind of gives you the impression the town doesn't keep things up. Same with the community building. Not just the floors, but the ramp, the side of the ramp, definitely, I checked that out the other day, because I was like, I could probably fix that.
Yeah, we're working pretty hard to do the things
Yeah.
that are noticeable as you come through town.
Because nobody wants to pay taxes to always be catching up, or
Mhm.
never catching up, I guess. But in general, I'd say the bulk of people, if they see things being maintained, they're on board with that.
Hmm.
When they see you let it go, they're like, yeah, we're not spending our money well. And You
So
wanna
the
keep
last
it-
one on the list was that Shaker Ball Field Trail, and that's a little bit more of a discussion of what we want there. We can run the mowers around and make a trail that people can walk. What I talked to Kevin about here was possibly getting some prices to put in a small gravel trail or some side of
There's-
trail that's really
That's been
identifiable.
gravelled, hard packed twice,
Mhm.
so it's already there.
What trail?
I have the map.
It's, yeah, so I have the map, it's just really overgrown.
Yep.
And I did talk to Jim this morning also about that, cause I talked to him a few other things. And he did say that once they were looking at replacing the bridge, cause the bridge has fallen. He goes, once the bridge is back in and they're out there doing it over the winter, it's what I think Rick is gonna do, our grounds guy. He says they'll look at it and see what needs repaired, cause he goes, if we can just cut the brush back and rediscover the already compacted and just, you know, re-drag it with the baseball diamond drag, then
I think you're gonna be
you
able to.
can,
do
you
that.
can be able to
And that bridge, the one that's closer to Enfield Center, that was an Eagle Scout project. You might wanna talk to the Boy Scouts and see if they
Definitely.
have somebody coming up.
Definitely did, they didn't, they were supposed to do it this year, but then from the way it sounds is they are no longer interested in
Okay.
doing that. Cause I talked to Joel, who's one of the leaders for it, and yeah, he kind of. Let's just say I felt like I was talking to a brick wall at times, cause he just didn't seem interested.
Yeah, it takes the right person.
Yeah.
It's worth a try.
We'll have it done.
Yes.
And that's really the projects I wanted to bring forward. I did put a little charge out to my department heads to be looking in the budget to see if there's anything else they can find, and then to also not dream up projects, but if there's projects that are in the near future that they may be able to bring forward, just if we have the money, we can have that discussion.
The other thing at that park that really needs to be addressed is there's not enough parking when they're running 2 games. And 4 teams with the people, parents and grandparents. And it's been expanded once, and then it was expanded by the town again, but I would say you need to go out a little further.
Yeah.
And again, it's basically the hard pack, the gravel's there, I believe. That doesn't have to be expensive, but it always
Even if
adds
they
up.
just move it,
And they have,
it's dry enough that you can park a little further.
parts of it are, not always.
Yeah.
Cause you're getting toward the swale now.
Right.
But even 5 more cars, 2 sides, so another 10 cars, that can absorb a lot of people parking. where it
On the
should-
road.
Yeah.
That's
and-
the
and they rut it
area
up.
that, Joni, what's her last name? One of our citizens wanted to build what's the
Pickleball court.
Pickleball.
pickleball? Oh, yes,
We're looking at a few areas to possibly do that.
that's good to hear.
Need some volunteer help, fundraising help, but we are looking at some different ways to do that.
I was hoping that whoever bought the roller
There is.
skate rink.
You're
was gonna
looking
turn
at
it into multiple pickleball courts. I don't know.
Get you a name.
Yeah.
tag.
Small metal shop.
And small lumber.
And some small retail yard.
Can't understand the sign out front.
Yeah.
That,
Oh, they're saw blades.
that's
It
just,
means sharpen your saw blades.
I've received inquiries from people that live out of town
They're
about
looking for the
whether
hole.
it was going to be skating, well, because I used to
Yeah,
The sign
derby there,
looks like
so-
it would.
yeah, right.
That's what I was-
But like,
Yeah.
Turning it into a skating
they're
rink.
taking the parking
that
lot apart
everybody
now.
had that impression,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it looked great before, now it
theoretically, the sign has to go.
Do you know what they're doing?
Well, it's gonna go away.
Yeah.
They're taking the parking lot apart.
I think they're making a place where trucks can back in on the back.
That may be part of his retail
Maybe
lumber.
level.
No,
Retail lumber.
no, it's for the runoff.
Is it carved up?
They need to fix the runoff.
I bet he could have got.
He also does landscaping.
That's what I
But
was
he wouldn't
hoping.
make
I don't
nearly
get
the
into
money.
Okay.
It's all about money.
Right.
but he did say they were gonna be doing some work in the back for loading it.
Any other questions? Somebody emailed me, since we're at the public comment section.
Oh, really?
And somebody emailed me questions and I didn't know the answers, so I figured I would just ask them now. So I was asked, so the tax rate apparently only went up 0.64 cents compared to last year.
Yeah, it went from 25.11 to 25.75.
Right. And the question was, why has it only gone up so much, given the fact that we approved all these spending projects? Okay,
Because we're being careful not to just take loans out to take loans out, so
so
as of now.
that's what I thought the answer was.
Excellent.
Yeah,
As of now,
Right,
there's been
right.
no payments.
yes,
Next year's budget will have the first payment of the public safety building.
right.
Um,
And so,
Depending on fund balance, we can talk about that.
right,
Too. I mean, that's an ongoing project, but it may be something to think about offsetting a little just for a phase in of it. Right.
and so.
That
right.
makes a lot more sense than some other possibilities.
Right. And so I figured that was the answer. I wanted to confirm it. And then, so then the follow-up question was when will the rates start going up? Because certain people, I guess, were ready for, my taxes are gonna go up a lot. And so you're saying it's gonna go up,
Like we projected, if both of them passed and the valuation stayed the same and all
Yep.
that, we were looking at a possibility of $300 per year per 100,000 in valuation.
right? And it's gonna come phased because the
Hopefully
two
valuations
projects,
go up a little bit, which will change that a little bit, but
all right, but two projects I'm not gonna hit at the same time. They'll be staggered by roughly a
well, our
year.
first payment on the public safety building will be done this June. We have not
Okay.
taken out financing for Whitney Hall, so we'll be at least a year out on that. So
Okay.
that
They'll be a year apart.
they'll be a year apart as they trickle in, which was part of the plan in my head too, to slowly kind of phase in that payment instead of it all hitting you.
So if I responded back saying, the reason why they haven't gone up is because we're actually not paying on the loans yet. And the tax rate would expect to be impacted over the next 2 to 3 years. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that's, yeah, and we're working hard to phase it in, so it's
Right.
not a big impact.
It's part
The
of it.
SRF loans we took out for the water sewer projects, as you heard at the last meeting, are interest only loans right now. The way SRF works is you pay that interest only. We actually haven't signed any loan documents. Once the project's done and we get the final bills, then they set the loan and we sign the loan paperwork and move forward, so. Those ones are a little weird because you're trying to explain to people what it's gonna cost and we won't know what the interest rate is until the project's over. And then we sign the paperwork, but the SRF loans are always extremely low interest rates compared to the market. But, so those ones aren't here yet either. Those will be being phased in. Those are more ratepayer than taxpayer, but they're still loans and they're working kind of the same way. So we'll do what we can do to keep those costs down and interest rates as low as possible and push payments off.
And 2/3 of your tax bill is the school. Don't forget.
Well, shouldn't part of the answer also be that, you've been working continually on getting grants. And there's been other funds that have come into town that we
Yeah.
didn't necessarily expect.
If we're looking at those, that's always a hard balance of
Right.
what grants. It's easy to go get grants and then you take on projects you wouldn't have taken on.
Right.
It's also trying to balance the cost of those, with the buildings and construction prices and all those. I'm hopeful we can bring the cost down a little, but if we can get some grants to keep the cost and get what we're looking for at that level, then that may be what we do, but
Well, I think that's an important piece of the answer because everybody wants to know that you've done that.
Yeah.
And made that effort.
Right, and
And
I
it
gave,
isn't common knowledge, I don't think.
right, I gave that example for the water and sewer,
Right,
right? It's like, hey, it hasn't gone up as much because of water and sewer, by the way. Those go to the users.
Well, the other thing we do as well is, we budget revenues a little low on purpose.
Mhm.
I don't want to say we budget expenses high, but we try to stay on the higher side of what we think they're gonna be. And when we all get said and done and we don't calculate what we think the valuation is gonna change, so as values go up, it changes the tax rate less. So we try to do all that work in the front side. So maybe it is a little bit less than you expected when it rolls out, if there's an increase. I didn't do the work to look it up. I should have. I got the question last week, but what were we projecting it to be coming out of last year's budget and what did it actually end up?
Okay.
And I do think we were talking somewhere in that 2 to 4% range, and we ended up at a 2.5% increase, so.
Okay.
Which in a year of 8% cost of living increases, I guess 2.5% is not horrible.
That's all. Yep, anything else?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Adjourn. Next meeting is in 2 weeks. Expect